What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and we're going to preview the 2024 schedule for the Tennessee Volunteers. Before we get to that schedule, let's look back at 2023. Here was the schedule from last season for Tennessee, going 9-4, losing road games to Florida, Alabama, and Missouri, and then losing at home to Georgia. And really, all these games were not all that close. The Alabama game, I still look back at that. I don't know if you guys remember that game, but Tennessee, they had that game in the first half. It looked like they were going to win easily and just played terribly in the second half. But anyways, that was a tough loss there. Missouri and Georgia, Florida, those are the games they lost, and then they took care of business in the rest of their games. And again, it's a schedule that wasn't all that tough. They had Virginia in the non-conference. They weren't great. Did have to play Alabama, and they play them every year, so that's no big deal there. They're used to that one. And then they played Texas A&M, so they didn't have to play, Ole Miss, didn't have to play LSU. So it was a tough schedule, but it wasn't horrible. We look to 2024, and this is the schedule for this upcoming season. We'll break it down. First, look at the non-conference. They play Chattanooga. They play NC State. That game will be in Charlotte, Kent State, and UTEP. So 3 pretty easy wins, more than likely. And then NC State and Charlotte could be interesting, but I feel like Tennessee is going to be the better team in that matchup. So a respectable non-conference schedule. I mean, not really when you've got 3 cupcakes. You look at the home schedule: Chattanooga, Kent State, UTEP, just talked about them. Florida, Alabama, Kentucky, and Mississippi State. So Alabama will be tough at home, but I think they're going to be in pretty good shape in those other 3 games. Kentucky's always a tough one. Florida's always a tough one. Mississippi State's a game that they'll be favored probably by a good bit. And so that's going to be the home schedule for Tennessee. All winnable games. They could absolutely go undefeated at home, especially with the turnover at Alabama. And, we really don't know how good they're going to be. You look at the road schedule, and then, again, there's that NC State game. It's a neutral field game. But then you've got Oklahoma on the road, Arkansas on the road, Georgia on the road, and Vanderbilt. Arkansas and Vandy shouldn't be too tough, even on the road. But Oklahoma and Georgia, both on the road. Those are going to be very tough matchups there for Tennessee. I'm not saying they have no chance, especially against Oklahoma, but they're definitely, I think, going to be underdogs in both of those. So let's break it down. Let's go week by week. They'll start with Chattanooga in week 1, and then it's NC State week 2 in Charlotte. So not week 1, but week 2 for this non-conference matchup. Kent State on September the 14th at home, and then they'll get Oklahoma on the road on the 21st. They get their first bye week in between Oklahoma and Arkansas. So those are not actually back-to-back road games. I mean, they are, but they're not back-to-back weeks because there's a bye week in between. Boy, it would really have been nice for Tennessee if those games could be flipped. You play Arkansas, then you get a bye week going into Oklahoma. That would be much better. But you're talking about in their first 4 games, NC State and Oklahoma, 2 tough games. And then, of course, the grind of the SEC. After their first bye week, they get Arkansas on the road. Then it's Florida at home, and then Alabama at home. And then after Alabama, so again, after a big game, they get a bye week. They get a bye week before Kentucky. That's really interesting. You'd like to have your bye weeks before going on the road to play Oklahoma and maybe before Alabama, not after those games. So I don't think the bye weeks are great. But, we talk about that Alabama game. How many times have you heard about Alabama beating teams twice? Because teams are so beat up from playing Alabama. Of course, this is a different Alabama team, so I don't know if it'll still hold true, but maybe a bye week after Alabama isn't the worst thing. Kentucky there on the 2nd of November. Then they're back home for Mississippi State on the 9th. And then it's a tough one on the road at Georgia on November 16th. They get a bit of a break with UTEP on the 23rd. And they close things out with Vanderbilt on the 30th. That game will be on the road, but still a couple of easier games to close out the season. Really, their season, it's going to be between Oklahoma and Georgia. I mean, that's the stretch for Tennessee. The first 2 games, and again, that's first 3 games, assuming they get by NC State. You've got those 3 games to start off the season. You've got 2 pretty easy games to close out the season. But those 7 games in the middle of the season, that's going to be a bit of a grind. Good news, again, they get 2 bye weeks in that stretch. Again, no back-to-back road games in terms of back-to-back weeks because of the bye week. Florida, Alabama, Kentucky, and Mississippi State, 4 home games. 4 conference home games in a row. You don't see that very often. So they've got a really good opportunity if they can take care of business at home. They lose on the road to Oklahoma, lose on the road to Georgia. They could still go 10-2 and get to the college football playoff with a 12-team playoff. So the schedule sets up in a way that I think makes Tennessee a legitimate playoff contender in 2024.